Good morning, beautiful homemakers. Before I begin with the pamphlets, I want to read a little from a book that backs up what these pamphlets have been talking about. Roger Vadim's biography entitled Bardot, Deneuve, Fonda, My Life with the Three Most Beautiful Women in the World, on page 119, he describes an FW, and I'm going to read 2 quotes from him. And the woman he is describing is not one of those 3 beauties named above. This is what he said. At that moment, a woman whose radiant beauty commanded the attention of every man present walked toward us. And then he describes her hair, her eyes, her skin that was luminous, how soft her skin looked, her nose, her mouth, and a body with full, rounded curves. She was the very essence of femininity, but more goddess than pin-up, with not a hint of aggressive sexuality. What have I been telling you, ladies? Radiant beauty. That means she was healthy. Rounded curves. She was not too skinny. Essence of femininity. A goddess, not a pin-up. Just as we discussed in pamphlet 1. A woman worthy of being worshipped, not as a sex object, for she had no hint of aggressive sexuality, but worthy of worship as a woman. She was high on her womanly pedestal. She wasn't an in-your-face, look-at-me girl. Her crêpe-de-chine blouse covered her bathing suit and covered her stomach because, guess what? She was 5 months pregnant and still the most stunning woman on the beach. What a difference to the woman I saw on a bus tour we were on the other day. There's a couple things about this woman. With this picture, you can see that her leg, one leg, was tattooed. And this gave her it gave her an elephant-like appearance on that leg. She had one gray leg that looked very visually heavy. And then her other beautiful svelte leg looked lovely. Had on very thick, exaggerated eyelashes. And she loved to prance back and forth on the bus, showing off her you-know-whats. She wasn't wearing a bra. And I watched all the men on the bus, and they all avoided looking at her. They all looked away from her as she was walking back to her seat. Why? A pretty woman, but not gorgeous, because she was in your face, look at me. Men don't like that. Unless they're players and they zero in on a woman like that and say, oh, okay, I want her tonight. But I think it would be terrible to have every face on the bus see you coming and everyone looks the other way, all because she was exposing too much of her body. Let's go back to this book by Roger Vadim. On page 120, he says about this woman whose name was Annette. Annette was a babysitter and a water skiing instructor in England. Her sister Mirette posed for fashion magazines. Although they arrived in Paris broke, they refused the advances of Ali Khan, the Maharaja of Baroda, Daryl Zanuck, and other millionaires seeking glamorous mistresses. They said no to relationships based on money, and no to marriages of convenience. That made them even more sought after. And he did eventually marry her. On page 19 of this same book, I also learned that a producer said of a newcomer, she's already done 3 screen tests. Nobody wants her. She has an impossible nose. There's no hope of a career for that girl." That girl was Audrey Hepburn. This same producer passed on a nobody named Leslie Caron, but Gene Kelly signed her for the lead role in An American in Paris. And then that same producer passed on a 15-year-old ballerina who held her head like a queen and who showed great acting ability, but whose teeth he did not like, and he thought she opened her mouth too much when she laughed. That was on page 26. Like Audrey and Leslie, young Bridget Bardot was rejected, as was that producer's movie. So let this be a lesson, ladies, that you need not be beautiful to every man, but you will be gorgeous to the one man whose heart you capture. You do that when you are mind-catching, as Annette was, and not just eye-catching, as we have discussed in several previous videos. I have also attended 2 memorial services recently where a mother and a daughter showed up, 2 different people at 2 different memorial services, and both the mothers and the daughters were very pretty women. But at each service, both the mother and the daughter were dressed inappropriately. And both of these mothers and daughters looked desperate for attention. In the first case, the mother and daughter's dresses were skin tight at a memorial service. They looked like they were ready to go out bar hopping, even though they had beautiful faces, perfect hair, nails done. The skin-tight dresses that they were wearing showed all their imperfections, but they were so desperate to catch the attention of men that they lost their better judgment. People would have interacted better with them had they been dressed modestly. But when you dress where you're showing every curve and every love handle, people shy away from you. At the other funeral, the mother looked gorgeous. She looked like she belonged in a fashion magazine, and from behind I thought she was in her 20s. The mother's dress would have been perfect except for one extremely glaring problem. Her beautiful feminine dress was ruined because her midriff showed. It looked like a dress, but it was actually 2 pieces and was completely inappropriate, frankly, for anywhere. Had that been a 1-piece sheath under the lace part of her dress, she would have gotten 10 out of 10. Her daughter, I guess mimicking her mother, also was dressed inappropriately, showing her midriff. And during the entire service, she kept her arms covering her stomach. Now, why would she do that? Because subconsciously, she knew she was underdressed and she was trying to hide herself, which resulted in her looking awkward and uncomfortable. Another thing that ruined the daughter's look is not only were the clothes inappropriate and the midriff was inappropriate, but she had a tag in the side of her shirt that you could see the outline of this long tag. And that's what I talked about in another video. Cut those tags off that you can see. It really ruins the look of an outfit. Now we're going to continue with the original 1922 Fascinating Womanhood pamphlet number 5. We are going to finish up the first chapter in this pamphlet, which is entitled The Appearance That Fascinates. And this last section is called What the Voice Should Do. With your manner and outward appearance contributing to your tender femininity, you must be careful that the good effect is not spoiled by your voice. Usually a girl practicing the manner outlined in the last chapter will instinctively modulate her voice to harmonize with her manner. Watch your voice for a few days. If you have already modified it to agree with this manner, or if modification is obviously unnecessary in your case, then forget about your voice. If, however, you discover that your voice is spoiling the impression you are endeavoring to create, then you will have to take a little time and effort to change matters. I know women with too high of a voice and women with too low of a voice. Now, they usually do find husbands, but sometimes it can take a bit longer because men will think, can I listen to that voice day after day after day? Now, if you have a really high-pitched voice or a really low-pitched voice, it might behoove you to seek the help of a voice coach. I've told you before that my voice sounds better on this recording, better on the phone. Don't know why, that's my opinion, but I think a huge reason is because I speak in my natural voice that is quieter than I normally have to use, because otherwise people are telling me, speak up, I can't hear you. When I used to work, at one time I was answering phones, and I had 3, in jest, marriage proposals from men who said, I could listen to you all day. And I know it was my voice that helped attract my husband as well. In fact, sometimes he says, while we're in the car, stop talking or I might drive off a cliff. However, in everyday life, to me, my voice doesn't sound this nice and soft. Occasionally, when I'm reading to my son during our schoolwork, he'll say, "Oh, you're reading like you do on your videos." And that's because I am not projecting my voice to be heard. I'm just reading in my natural, soft voice. And I need to step into that more in my everyday life. The pamphlet continues, your voice, too, should help to bring out the contrast between yourself and men. It, too, should emphasize your tenderness and charm. You want to bring out the qualities which men's voices do not possess. You must not let your voice suggest mannish efficiency, coarse boldness, and the ability to kill your own snakes. And I know that when I am trying to argue my point with my husband, my voice will change to that bold, crisp, authoritarian tone, trying to make my point heard. And I am sure my husband hates it. The voice should be just as soft and alluring, just as appealing to the man's chivalrous desire to protect and shelter as the person herself. No man likes a coarse, loud tone in a woman any more than a woman likes an effeminate tone in a man. And no man likes mumbling, full, monotonous, or a sing-song voice, because such a voice indicates to him that the character behind the voice is equally dull and uninteresting. Marilyn's voice drove men wild in a good way, and while you don't have to go as far as Marilyn did, though you can if you can keep it up, your voice should be more on the soft side like Marilyn's and not with the cackling laughter. Okay, let's keep going. If you have any difficulty with your voice, a few weeks' practice ought to help you greatly. Speaking aloud to yourself or reading aloud in the privacy of your room, endeavoring all the time to eliminate the objectionable feature in your voice, should be effective. And tape yourself on your phone. Work on enunciating each syllable. A half hour devoted to this every day ought to be sufficient if it is kept up for 3 to 4 weeks. When reading aloud, read as if you were reading the history of your own life. Put laughter into your voice at the humorous parts, sorrow at the sad parts, enthusiasm, delight, eagerness, wonder, love, pity, and every other praiseworthy and attractive sentiment or emotion. And when you think of it, practice consciously the same versatility of voice in your conversation. We've talked about watching old black and white movies in order to study the women. Many of them, with maybe the exception of Katharine Hepburn, were extremely feminine, and they knew what they were doing. However, I did recently watch one movie called Keeper of the Bees, a very old black and white one, where the heroine had extremely mannish behaviors, an exaggerated arm swing, a mannish walk. It was very hard to believe that the hero of the movie was attracted to her. And I immediately noticed how ugly it was. The movements were incongruous to the beautiful look of the woman. Don't be embarrassed if you think that you need a voice coach. Remember that all great singers have had voice lessons. So if this is an area you need to work on, start with the reading aloud, and then if you need a voice coach, get one for a few weeks. Just remember, it's a soft voice that attracts men. Loud voices and harsh voices don't. What is even more important than the voice is how you say what you're going to say. The Bible says, a soft answer turns away wrath. Listen to what I wrote down back in 2019. My husband and I had taken a little trip up the coast, and he had given me a map that he had printed, and he wanted me to tell him where he should exit the freeway. Only problem? The map didn't have any street names on it. But I'm pretty good at reading a map, and I said to him, I don't know the name of the street because it's not on here, but I think you should turn at the next exit. He didn't listen to me. He wanted to put it into GPS, even though I was right. So I ended up throwing all the pages at him. But I wasn't ugly mad. I didn't put him down. I wasn't irritated. I was pouting mad. I was hurt because he didn't listen to me. So I crumpled up that map and I threw it at him. And he laughed good-naturedly. And I wrote in my journal that I have come to discover that when I am little girl mad, he finds me irresistible. So then we arrived at the restaurant, and the trees were filled with cawing crows. It was a racket. And I said with a sly smile, "See, even the crows are mad at you." And he laughed. We had a pleasant meal, and then as we were leaving, I went into the restroom, and he waited outside. And when I arrived outside, he held my hand. But I am very lucky in that even when I do get mad, 99 times out of 100, my husband just responds with love and gentle words, which in turn gives me an even greater love for him. And I try to do the same thing. When he's upset about something, obviously I try to comfort him and not react, but give him soothing words back. We both also try to ask each other for forgiveness. He's better at doing that than I am. I'm a bit stubborn. But there have been times when I have had to stop and say, I'm sorry. That was very disrespectful, because I have learned that sometimes we don't even know we're being disrespectful, but to a man it is disrespect. So I really try and take account of my tone of voice and the why my voice is raising. For instance, in 2020 we were going for a walk and we crossed a busy street, and he was on his phone in the crosswalk. And I got really mad at him. Put your phone away, blah, blah, blah. We crossed to the other side, and I stopped and I said, I'm sorry. That was very disrespectful how I spoke to you. And first of all, I think he was shocked that I apologized and recognized it as being disrespectful. But then I told him, when you're not paying attention when we're crossing the street, that makes me feel unprotected. So I reacted by blaming you. Not calling him names, but my tone of voice indicated that he was being foolish. So I explained to him why I had this over-the-top reaction. He understood, and we no longer even bring our phones on our walks anymore. And then several months later, a car almost did hit us in that very same crosswalk. But we were alert and were able to get out of the way in time. Another story this brings to mind about how you speak, tone of voice, and what you say is we were at a get-together, and there was a divorced couple there. The man had the children, and he brought them to the party. The party wasn't to end until 10 p.m. The ex-sister-in-law had made arrangements for out-of-town people to stay at a hotel nearby, getting them a discount rate so that they could stay the full length of the party. Well, at 8 o'clock, he starts getting ready to go. And she's like, "What are you doing?" In a very harsh, high-pitched voice. "Why are you doing this?" "Well, I'm going to go to the airport. I've got a hotel there." "What? Why would you do this?" She was basically saying, why would you do something so foolish as to not stay at the hotel I picked for you? Why would you drive the 2 hours to the airport instead? Why? And she kept saying, why? Why? What made you do this? She was intimating, I have arranged everything and my plan was perfect. Well, I knew why, because I had had a conversation with him. He wanted to get to the airport because they had a really early morning flight, and he knew it would be easier for the kids to have the drive to the airport that night and be sleepy and then fall into bed than in the morning trying to get them up for this early morning flight and driving 2 hours. But her tone of voice and the why and the wanting her own way. My husband, as we laughed, he said, "Wow, I understand why they're divorced." And I said, "No, that wasn't his ex-wife. That was his ex-sister-in-law." However, the word why, it's never conducive to a situation because it implies that you're stupid. So try never to say, "Why did you do that?" It's hard to not say that in the moment, but what made you choose that? You have to take on not that your way is right, but let me listen to why you chose to do it a different way. "Oh, I thought you were going to stay at the hotel down the street. Did that not work out well for you?" Instead of why. He just was standing there like a deer in the headlights and didn't even answer. He was just like, "I'm leaving now." He couldn't answer her why questions because it sounded accusatory to him. And the last thing I'll say about that is that ex-sister-in-law, when she kept saying why, she had a big smile on her face. She was just incredulous. She wasn't trying to be mean. She just didn't understand, and she most especially did not understand how she was coming across. That she was coming across as a very shrill-voiced control freak. That is behavior that fills men and husbands with disappointment. We don't have a movie of ourselves, and we have our own thoughts in our head. I'm sure she didn't realize that she was doing anything wrong. But the rest of us looking out were like, ooh, this is embarrassing. I feel bad for that guy. And yet the ex-wife, she was nodding her head and rolling her eyes like, yep, he's an idiot. He's a fool. But he isn't. The wife was also very controlling because she had a lot of energy. She liked to get things done. She wanted things done her way. She referred to him as one of the children, and that's just not okay. Your husband is not a child, and you should not even joke about him being one of the children who doesn't do anything. We're going to be talking about that kind of thing in the future when we go over biblical womanhood and how to talk to men to help get them on your page without you coming off as a shrill shrew. Apologizing when you have been disrespectful will work wonders in your relationship. Now, I wouldn't normally share my dreams with you, but a while ago I had a dream with such a great allegory that I thought I'd share it. The dream was about two people, and one of them is a man who is aging gracefully, and his wife isn't. She's never put any thought into her looks or her dress. She has worked hard all her life, even though he was an excellent provider, and in the unfairness of life, he looks good as he's going gray, and she doesn't. So in the dream, I saw him drive up in a new Mercedes, and then she pulled into the parking lot beside him in a broken-down Cadillac. The windows were askew in her car. The headliner had fallen down and was hanging in streams around her. The seat stuffing was coming apart, and I went up to this man, which I would never do in real life, and I said, "How can you drive this Mercedes while you're letting your wife drive that?" And he replied, "I bought her this Mercedes as a gift, but she refuses to give up her jalopy." Are you as eye-catching as a sleek, beautiful, purring Mercedes? Or are you coming across as a loud, obnoxious, or I don't care, backfiring jalopy? I think I've told you this story before, but I'm going to reiterate it because it's along the same point. A few years ago, I was walking into a department store, and I had already had my hand on the door, and I was pulling it open, when a young man, 20 or 30 years younger than me, came out of another door farther down, and he called out, "No, over here. I've got the door for you. Come through my door." So I obeyed him. I let go of my door. I walked over to where he was, and I went through. Then I thanked him. Now, he didn't do this because I looked like a feeble old lady. And he didn't do this because I was a beautiful young lady whom he wanted to meet. No, I am a middle-aged, slightly overweight lady who has a ready smile. And I was wearing a flattering dress with kitten heels. His masculine chivalry was awakened simply because I was dressed femininely. Is chivalry dead? When there are no feminine women, chivalry dies. But when you become feminine, when you dress femininely, when you practice the feminine arts, then chivalry will awaken just for you. May God bless you, ladies, as you work on having a quiet spirit, a soft voice, and step into the femininity God created in you.